And we are rolling. Mr. Joseph Dingle, how are you doing?
All right, all right. How about yourself?
Very good, man. Thanks for asking. So, I will give you a brief introduction. So, this is Joseph Dingle. He's a drummer, and currently, you're still in the Atlanta area. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, so still in the Atlanta area. He plays currently playing in bands Eliminate Earth, Far From Sober, Stoneman, Ether 9, and Freakshow Cinema are the current. And, you're falling into the trap that I always fall into. If you play drums, if you're any good at drums, you get stuck playing like a ton of bands. So I know how it goes. And sometimes, I mean, it's fun to do, so it's hard to say no.
Oh,
Especially
right.
if the people you're playing with are fun and cool, it's
Mm-hmm.
always difficult to say no because you just want to play. If you enjoy playing music, you want to play all the music you can play.
Right, right.
So, so So what I'd like to do, so I'd like to give you a chance, tell your story and, start back, however far back you want to go from where you were born, where you grew up. And then at a certain point, we're going to, we'll get to a point where we cross paths at some point in your timeline, but go ahead, man. The stage is yours.
All right. Well, how does it start? All right. Well, of course, I was born in New York, Queens, New York, and it was funny because my parents bought. I remember back had a drum set. I had two drum sets, and for a long time, I've been around drum sets, even at church, even at certain churches. There were drum sets right there, and I remember this kid. He played this one beat. I remember this, and this young kid. It was like a teenager, and I would always stare at him and play as he's playing, but never did I thought I would play drums until it was a few years later when I moved to Georgia when I was a teenager, and this guy, his name was Joe McCallop. He was actually I call him my drum teacher. He played he played Sunday services, and I remember just staring at him the whole time, just staring at him. And he had a big drum set. He had a nice white pearl 5-piece kit, and he had it set up a certain way. And I would just sit there and watch him and watch how he did his fills, his rolls. And I remember asking him, I was like, "Hey, can I get a pair of sticks?" Because I would always look at a lot of rock drummers too, and I'd sit there and see them playing drums on television and even at certain shows, and I was like, "Dude, you gotta let me have one of these sticks." So he was so nice enough to give me a pair of sticks, and then remember bugging my parents constantly about getting me a drum kit, even showing them like pictures from magazines from like its old Guitar Center and a store called Mars Music. They had brochures and catalogs of like different drum sets, and I was like, "Oh, I want that one. I want this one." So it was one time where he gave me these sticks, and I was so excited that I would go to my room, set up a few boxes and pots and pans. And yeah, I used to annoy the crap out of my parents because that's all they would hear is just tapping and all and a lot of loud noises. But here I was in the room. I would turn on VH1 and look at all these drummers and listen to a lot of my favorite bands and how they would, how the song would go, and just I would just try to play whatever they're playing and try to imitate what they're doing. And I remember a few months later, my parents had a picture of me at 1 years old with a drum set. And same time, it was for Christmas. It was a Christmas. One of they bought me this drum set. I remember this drum set. It was an old TKO kit. It was a red kit. It had one splash cymbal, and then it went on from there. And then years later, I remember playing churches. I played a a Jewish church, and even before that, I had music lessons from Joe McCallop. I was in band in junior high school and high school, and I did marching band, and I learned from a lot of different drummers on certain things and on how they played. And I even, I even jammed with a Marine band once, which that was cool. And we were a jazz band, and I didn't like do band like actual rock bands until it was around 2010. It was the first band I played in was a band called Secrets Behind Stitch Lips, and we were experimenting. We were learning about one another, and and then it went from them to a few other bands. Same thing. It was more of jamming. We jammed. We worked on some songs. We had a few songs. We played. We actually played the Masquerade too. Believe it or not, it was a fun experience. It was actually back when the Masquerade was the old building, and
I remember that.
oh man, the Heaven stage. Oof, you got to watch out for the the floors. It would move. I remember the times I'm walking and it would move. And yeah, it was a fun experience. I learned from got to share stages with some good bands that we came across, and of course it it uh, it went from there, and then somehow or another, 2015, I got this call. I was on Craigslist. I was looking for another band. I was on Craigslist, and somehow I got this call.
Craigslist.
Yeah, it helps. And I got a call from a buddy of mine. His name was Mike from Eliminate Earth, and he called me, and because I was like, I hope this works. I hope this goes well. Get a call from him, and he was like, "Hey, we're looking for a drummer." And a few days later, I actually met him, and I met Jay. We went to the house and jammed for a little bit, and I wasn't sure until I met Noel, and when I met Noel, that's when it all like meshed in completely. It was like I was like, okay, I have to be a part of this. These are good people, you know. And then of course, our first show was actually at Wonder Root, and then that's how I met bands like Rotten Stitches, and of course, I met you guys. It's been a long time. It was a long time, and
That was like, I think that was 2015. So I'd come down with World War IX. It was either 2015 or 2016, one of those 2 years.
Yeah,
but we had played Atlanta once before. It was at what was that place called? The Dragon's Den?
Oh,
was that the name of that? Where they would have house shows?
Oh,
yeah,
man,
that was a crazy place.
Whew,
yeah, right. So that one, they probably had to demolish that house by the time they were done with that one.
Who knows?
They had to take the bulldozer to it.
Oh, man.
But we played, then we came back. I brought them back down the second year, and that's when we played. It was an actual like venue place, and that's where we met you guys.
Yes.
And I forget, what was the band? Do you remember what band you were playing in that show? That particular show?
Eliminate Earth.
That was Eliminate Earth. Okay, yeah. So we played the show, and then you guys went on, and I was like, I went up to the drummer for World War IX. I was like, this drummer is amazing. This guy is awesome. But then but here's the problem though. The next few days, I kept talking about you, and I think he got kind of annoyed, and he was like, you know what you're gonna do? He's like, you're gonna move back down south, and you and Joseph are gonna start like a cult or something. But here's the thing: I did move back down south, but we haven't started a cult yet. So what we got to do? We got to start a drummers cult.
Yes,
I think that's what we're gonna do next.
I'm down with that.
Yeah, just to prove just to prove John from World War IX right. I don't want
Mhm.
him to make predictions that are false. We have to start a cult now.
Yeah,
The prophecy has been made. The
it has.
prophecy was made.
It has.
So at some point, I mean, there's no rush, but at some point we'll start a drumming cult. Everybody's got to
Mhm.
come in, and we'll have drum circles on which day. It'll be either be Saturday or Sunday. You know what we'll do? We'll be different. We're gonna have our instead of having a lot of religions they pick Saturday or Sunday for like the holy day. It's
Mhm.
gonna be both. We're gonna
Oh,
have Saturday and Sunday will be the drumming holy day.
exactly. Yes.
So right. And we'll
Definitely.
take, as far as cult leaders, it'll be easier because it'll be two of us. Because usually it's just like one guy, like David Koresh, and that's a lot of responsibility, to run a whole cult like a Jim Jones type deal. But if there's two people, that's going to make it a lot easier. So we can trade off. One week you'll run the cult, the next week I'll run the cult. So anyway, I thought you would think that was funny because I kept going on about how good your drumming was, like that for basically the rest of the tour. But no, but so your drumming style was really, it's hard to find really good technical drummers that are willing to play because you're like me, you'll play in almost any type of band as long as it's fun.
Mhm.
And it's hard to find, so a lot of punk rock bands, it's hard to find good drummers that are technical that can play. That's why I guess a lot of metal drummers, they don't want to play punk rock, but when they do, it's usually really, really good. And
Mhm.
so what you do, you play, you play punk metal, but you also play everything. I wanted to also ask you, that you play bagpipes. Am I right about that?
Um, I play in a bagpipe band. I'm actually the
A
snare.
bagpipe band. Okay.
Yes, I play snare. Hmm. Yep.
And how did you get involved in that?
Oh man, I actually think I'm so bad with names, but he'll probably end up hating me after this. But Shane, that's his name. Yes, me and him actually hung out at the Highland Games, and it was funny because
What
I've been wanting to
what
do this.
I'm sorry, what
Hmm?
sorry not to interrupt, but what are the Highland Games? I'm not familiar what are the Highland Games?
The Highland
I'm not
Games.
familiar with that.
It's a festival, like a Scottish festival, where they have games, they have food, they have different bagpipe bands, they have competitions. Everybody basically wears kilts.
So you were there and that's how you met the people and got involved with it? How did that work out?
That actually, it worked out really well. Me and him were heading to one of the tents because they have like different clan tents, and I actually saw a group of people wearing the same tartan, but they all had bagpipes. And he said, "Hey, I think they're missing a few snare drums." And I remember saying, "Well, hey, I can play drums." And I actually talked to the whole group, and it was one snare drummer. Her name is Denise Duncan, and I call her Sarge. And she played this one snare cadence, which I was like, that is sick. And I was like, hey, can I join you guys? I can learn, and that's when it went from there on. And she's been my teacher ever since. One of the best teachers, Scottish snare teachers I've ever had. One of the best ones. So, yep.
Nice. Now did are you able were you able to learn or what you learned for Scottish snare, have you been able to incorporate that into your other like rock drumming and every other drumming? There has to be a
Absolutely.
few things you've learned that you'd be able to throw in.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, there's certain things in the songs where I try to add what I've learned from the Scottish drumming, even though yes, it has a jazz. The Scottish drumming has this jazz vibe coming into it, but I was like, maybe I can add this to this. I can do something with this and then add it where it makes it very unique, I guess you could say. Yeah. So it has
Hmm.
it has changed my drumming
So
up a little bit.
so I wanted to ask you, what part of Queens were you from when you were in New York?
Far Rockaway.
Far Rockaway. Okay, here's a
Yeah.
funny thing about Far Rockaway that you probably remember. You know, the Ramones say it's not far to reach. It actually is pretty far to reach, depending on where you're at. If you're in Brooklyn, if you're in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and you want to go to Far Rockaway, it's pretty far to reach. So those lyrics were very misleading. Very,
It
because
is.
what is it? The F train? What takes you? I think it's the F train takes you down to Far Rockaway, right? I forget which one, N or the F or one of those.
I'm
I think
guessing
it's the
so.
F.
I haven't been there in a long time.
But it's
Literally.
funny because I've been there and at one time drove, then one time took the train, and it is actually pretty far to reach either way, depending on traffic, and even on the train. So the very first time I was like, I just started laughing because I was like, hey, hold on a second, I was lied to all these years. Joey Ramone was telling me. Joey Ramone told me that it's not far to reach. That was a fib,
He's fired.
but that's cool. Yeah. So that's cool. So what age did you say you moved from there down south?
I think I was like 10 or 11, somewhere around there.
Okay, and so you were already well into playing drums at that point, and then so what did you do? So what did you do for fun when you were in New York as a kid?
Oh my
What
goodness.
was young Joseph into?
Oh my goodness. I was always, we always, oh my goodness. We always played cops and robbers. Um, we, we would make up all these weird games and just, even though it involved, hurting yourself, like, you know how little kids would like to play wrestling and
Yeah,
fighting games. Oh my goodness, it was.
yeah. Oh, that's all we did when growing up, fighting. That's why our generation was tougher because all we did was fight and get hurt all the time. And then if we got hurt, our parents were mad that we got hurt, or that we were hurting each other. That's what made it even more fun.
No, it's crazy.
Yeah. So
Ah,
what was it like? So when you moved down south, did you go directly to Atlanta area from New York or Queens
I
or
actually
Far
lived.
Rock?
I actually lived in Decatur and then moved to Stone Mountain for a little bit.
Okay,
Excuse
so
me.
you bounced a few places in Georgia,
Yeah. Yes.
not
Yes,
just
sir.
the Atlanta area, but a few different places. So
Yeah.
what was
Yeah.
it like, going from a place like New York being in the South? Because see, I've lived in both places, so I understand the difference. So I did the opposite. I was from the South, moved up north, and then back. So, but what was it like as a kid? Did you have to adjust? What did you do? Did you have to learn about copperheads and rattlesnakes and stuff like that when you're walking around outside?
It was a different culture shock, I will say that. That was actually the first time I learned about palmetto bugs and wasp. I don't remember ever dealing with wasp up north, but we, I learned about palmetto bugs, wasps. The weather here was a very big difference. I never
Mm-hmm.
thought that it would be so cold, or excuse me. Yeah, I never thought it would be like very, very warm here, like very hot. And like I said, it was not an issue to get used to. I just had to, I guess get used to it. That's the way to say it.
Yeah, you just don't wear the big. You just don't need have it. There's no need for those big coats like you need up in New York.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely don't need those big coats. So when you're playing, okay. So I was another thing. So when you're playing that, so we used to have a rule in the Ray Grady's. We would have a rule, and it wasn't. It was we collectively agreed that for every show we would never drink more than 2 beers before we play. So do you play sober? What's your, because everybody plays different. So, well, and also like we would throw that out the window if it was like a party show and we knew that it really didn't matter, because some shows you can just, it doesn't matter, it's not. But for real shows it was always 2 beer limit. That was our, before we hit the stage we always had a two beer limit. What's your philosophy for playing when it comes to playing sober or not?
Personally, I would prefer to play sober simply because I've had moments before where I played drunk once, and this was a practice actually. I played drunk, and I actually had a recording of it, and I remember looking at myself being drunk playing, and uh what it wasn't good at all.
Yep, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Now, however, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it is with marijuana, but with Stoneman, I'll have one hit or two before we play because I mean it's Stoneman. Stoneman. It's about fun riffs, enjoying what you do, and possibly if you feel like being stoned, help yourself. But other other
Makes sense to
than
me.
man, uh, oh man, but yeah, yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, so who? Let's see. I remember I have some scribble written down here, but like I told you before, sometimes I have a hard time just reading my own scribble if I'm writing
Mhm.
really fast. So
Okay.
I was going to ask you who. So who are some of your drumming influences? Like who's your favorite drummers of all
Oh
times?
man,
Let's say top three favorite drummers.
top
Like,
three.
and I'm not talking about. Let's talk about. And when I say that, I mean like drummers that you tried to play like and who influenced your playing. You know what I mean? You can have favorite drummers, but who's, say top two, two or three that actually you tried to play like, and by doing that, you actually kind of incorporated their style.
Mm. Well, I would say Dave Lombardo. He's one of them. Gene Hoglan, and I have to say one of my favorite drummers I've watched, local drummers actually, is Ty Watkins. He did a few things that were very, 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 very phenomenal as far as like accents. He would, he would like every time he would go to the one, he would hit his bell ride with his snare, or when he's trying to build up, he would hit the bell ride, and then it would be with the snare drum. So Ty Watkins would be another influence. Um, and of course, Joey Jordison. He's more
Mm-hmm.
into the pocket playing. Of course, Marky Ramone. He was another one. He was more 4/4, but his speed and his with his hi hat is so good. And I try to do that. I try to imitate what he does. Of course, Derek Roddy is another one. Lars Ulrich, you know, Lars Ulrich, and many more, many more. Of
I
course,
have a question. Didn't Joey Jordison die?
he did.
I thought he did, right. And but here's what's ironic about that is Marky Ramone is still out there playing.
I know.
Like I've been watching these videos of him on Facebook where he has, he's always had his own band. He had Marky Ramone and the Intruders, Marky Ramone and I forget the other one, Speed Demons or something, something like that. It's gonna be funny because it has a real name, but I don't think it was Speed Demons. It was something else.
Yeah.
But he has a new band that he's been touring with, and what they're doing, and what I like is they've been doing a lot of songs off Pleasant Dreams, which was a really good album. But he's been, during sound check, they usually, one of the girlfriend or whoever will be out there, filming with a cell phone. So he's been uploading those to Facebook for people to actually see him when they do sound check, which is really cool. And they do some also live clips too during the show. But I don't know, I've been enjoying them.
That's
him
cool.
posting that. And he was smart. He got these dudes. I don't know about the guitar player and bass player, but he got like a tall dude, tall skin dude to do the Joey Ramone. Like they're kind of
Wow.
doing like trying to look more Ramones. You got your lead singer up front. You got your bass. So he even did the stage setup. Stage
Hmm.
left was Dee Dee, and then stage right was would be Johnny. But it's imitation Johnny, imitation Dee Dee, and imitation Joey.
Yeah.
But then you have the real Marky. But it's pretty cool if anybody
That's
wants to
awesome.
check it out. It's
That's
it's cool that
awesome.
he's still out there playing.
Yeah. And
And
another
I
thing.
think I think Richie Ramone is also. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna say if I ever were to learn his little hi hat technique, call me. I'm willing to learn, buddy. I'm
I
willing.
think it's all in the wrist. I've watched him, and it's completely. It's almost like almost in the fingers. It's not even just the
Mm,
wrist because he's not exerting a lot of effort. Like it's all in the. It's almost like in the hand, not even the wrist. He's like almost using his fingers.
yeah,
It's pretty fun to watch.
and he doesn't stop. He can do
What do
it
you
like.
think?
Go ahead.
Yeah, he can go. He can go forever. And there's a slight delay, so for anybody that's listening,
Ah,
bear with us. So I was want to ask you, what do you think about? So the music today is a lot different than, let's say, even just 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Everything's digital.
mhm.
Everything is Spotify. Most people or YouTube. Most people there's people still buy vinyl just for like as a collectible,
Mhm.
but everything's digital. But what is your feelings about the music industry and scene today? Because I know you do post stuff about this on Facebook, so I was going to give you a chance to and elaborate a little bit more on that.
Well, hmm. Well, best way I could say it with that is, I mean, I'm glad that there are websites and links where you can pull your music out more, where people can listen to it than it was back in the day. I would say keep keep doing your music and don't let just keep working on what you like to do. I mean, keep creating your music. As far as the industry is concerned, I mean, I'm glad that there are independent uh, labels and things like that you can do, and just do things DIY. There's DIY art, DIY labels. There's different ways to make your music be heard, and I could say with the technology, definitely use it to its advantage, but always enjoy enjoy your craft. Have fun with it, because you never know what could happen. Don't give up. Don't give up.
Now, I knew everything was going to change as soon as Napster came. Do you remember that back when
Uh,
Napster came out? It was
yeah.
Napster and LimeWire and Kazaa, I think.
Hmm.
But I knew that was going to change the playing field as soon as music could be shared over the internet.
Hmm.
Without having it. It could just go from computer to computer. I
Hmm.
knew that was going to be like change everything, and it did. It did eventually change everything.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. I didn't think it was going to be quite as much to where the artist would not see a cut of it as much.
Yeah.
I thought it would be at least a little bit more. I know people are always going to send each other. You can just go to YouTube and use a like an MP3 downloader and basically download any song you want. But there's still going to be people that use services like Spotify and Pandora and
Hmm.
even YouTube Music and Apple Music. But I would have thought that the artist would have at least got a little bit more of a cut. I think it's just because they didn't raise hell enough about it. And
Yeah.
so these
Yeah.
corporations, they're like, well, we'll just take it. What are they going to do about it?
Right. Yeah.
Because you have to have like a trillion plays on Spotify just to make like a penny. I mean, I'm exaggerating, of course, but
Yeah.
I thought that possibly, and as far as like, so with Facebook, so there was a time, this is around pre 2011, I think, that if you had a band page or a business page, and I've talked about this before, if you had a band page or a business page that you could all the people that followed that page, if you posted something, they would see it. It would be usually, it was most of the time in chronological timeline. It wasn't the algorithm type timeline. And what that did, that gave the underdog a shot. If you had a small business, let's say you have a coffee shop, that would actually, if you wanted to post something, anybody that followed you, it was almost surely to see it if they, checked their Facebook. Same thing if you're a band. If people liked your band and followed it on Facebook, if you posted something about a show or a release, that it was almost guaranteed that that person would see it. But then I remember basically the day that it happened, they changed it to where you have to pay to quote unquote boost your post. And I knew it was over. I was like, oh, I knew it was too good to be true. I knew they would find a way, because what that did, that puts everything back into the hands of the people with money. Because if you have the money, you can basically make anything famous. You can take this most terrible artist and with the most terrible music, and if you pump enough money behind that, they will get famous. And there will be people that listen to it and they will, oh, this is good music. So it's like they're created. So that's how I feel about that. But here's the thing: you can't fight it, because oh yeah, how do you feel about AI with being involved in art and music? What's your thoughts on that? And unfortunately, at this moment, we lost Joseph's feed. He was still there. Him and I were still talking, but the recording feed somehow disappeared. So, unfortunately, after this part, there is no more Joseph speaking. But I do go on to ramble about a few topics while Joseph and I are still talking. So I'll go ahead and add these on. Let's return to me rambling. I'll tell you a funny story. So I went on one of the AI music maker things, and I was just wanting to play with it and see what it could do. So I found one of them, and I told it. So I played drums for this band called Morning Glory up in New York, and of course I played guitar and sang in the Ray Grady's. So I told it, I was like, make a song in the style of Morning Glory at NYC. And I'm telling you, this thing, it created a track. And here's the creepy part. The creepy part is the snare was the exact snare sound that we had, worked on in the studio. We actually, that was and the kick drum. It got the kick drum right, the kick drum sound right. It got the snare drum sound right. And even the guitar sounds, not perfect. The guitars, it still didn't get those nailed, but that's what, it creeped me out, because I was like, that sounds like exactly what we did in the studio as far as the drum sound. And the song and the melody, it's slightly generic, but I just thought that was crazy. Just the fact that it could get the actuals, because, I remember being in the studio working on we had two different snares. So we're working on the sound for each snare for whatever song we were playing. And I was like, that's it's almost like they took that snare and went, in that studio. It's crazy. Okay. And then same thing for the Ray Grady's, that I told it, I said, create a song in the style of the Ray Grady's. And it came back, but that one, it actually got my guitar sound. It nailed it. And I'm like, that's crazy. It totally nailed my guitar sound. And the vocals, it's still not quite there. I mean, maybe some are, but the one I was using, it was just some generic. It sounded like some Blink-182 pop punk vocals, but I guarantee it's only going to get crazier and crazier. But the way I look at it, okay, we're not going to be able to get rid of it. Okay, it's here. It's just like Napster. It's just like Kazaa. It's just like the internet. It's never going to go. So we can use it as a tool, because think about this. So in the studio, they've already been using drum triggers forever. So now And that's basically a type of AI where it goes through the whole track and it replaces all of your snare. And if it doesn't replace it completely, it adds in, it'll thicken up the snare, or at least, to give it a more consistent tone. Let's say there's one snare you don't hit quite as hard. If you use the triggers, and sometimes you don't want to use triggers because you want that discrepancy in how hard you're hitting. I'm sure there's an actual word for that, but at least I got the word discrepancy right. So, yeah, so that's what and it's same thing for like artwork. I think it can be used as a tool, but I do agree with you. Once it starts replacing actual art, it's going to be really tough for humans to kind of top that, especially if it's already, like I said, make a song like Morning Glory NYC and it pumps out a song that's basically a Morning Glory NYC song. So we'll have to make sure. It's going to be tough we have to be the ones that it answers to instead of the other way around. But who knows? It might become our overlord at some point. So we'll see. It's like you said, just keep fighting the good fight. I think a lot of drummers, if they play hard and heavy, because I was probably 19. I think I was around 19 or 20 years old. But I was playing, I hit the snare so hard, it popped back, the drumstick popped back, hit me in the lip. It hit so hard, I had a swollen lip for like a week. It was bad. And then I've hit myself in the eye before. And then also, have you ever done the thing where you hit your knuckle on like the rim of the snare and then you're bleeding everywhere? You probably had that happen, right? Oh yeah, that's a normal one. But yeah, drummer injuries are something that are underreported. We need to report the drummer injuries. It's a problem. I think we need a foundation, but you know what? That's how we're going to help. We're going to get people into our cult by offering some sort of like physical, care for drummers that have injured themselves while playing drums. So that's how we'll get our first members. We'll offer them, free health care for injured drummers. Say we get that's how we get. And see if then we get them to come in, then their families will come and it'll grow, it'll be something like that. There are so many, I've said this forever. I promise you that the best guitar player that ever lived like on planet Earth probably never left the basement or never left the garage, because some people, they're really good, but they just don't want to play in front of people. They don't want that recognition. I know singers. I know several singers who are so good, but they will not, they just don't want to, they have no interest in, and like the voice is better than, anything you hear on the radio. So some people, I'm telling you, the best, so then you has people like us who we just like, we don't mind the recognition. We like playing out and having fun. I'll tell you a funny one. So this is like 2010. It was either 2010 or 2011. I think it was 2010. But so I'm playing drums with Morning Glory, and we played this show in West Philly, and it was let's see, another band I played in, Population Zero, played. But there was another band that it was the guys from Leftover Crack. It was one of his new bands played. So it was actually a big show, but it was in this small little venue, and it was a 2-level venue. So the show it was like the main bar was on the first floor, and then they had the show on the second floor. And it wasn't, when I say small, but it was still, for that many people, it was way too many people that should have been in that building. Okay, so we're playing, and so first one, I played for Population Zero. I think we played, if not first, played second. So I was on double duty that night. So I played drums for them. And then Morning Glory played, and it was so hot. I remember the AC was broke. It was middle of summer. But so these kids, they're all there's certain parts of the song where they're just jumping up and down. There's certain little hooks, like choruses, where it's just doom, doom, doom. And I remember seeing the floor, and I'm watching the floor just go like this. So I'm like, I start looking around, and I'm like, what can I jump up and grab onto if this floor caves in? So I look behind me, and there's a TV behind me, and I'm like, well, I know when they mount those TVs, they screw them right into the studs, so that'll hold me up. So my plan was, if I started seeing the floor cave in, I was just going to jump up and grab onto the TV mount and just hang there while everybody else plummeted to the first floor. You got to think ahead. Always got to think ahead. The honor's all mine. Besides, we needed to figure out how we're going to start this cult too. I've been really dragging my feet on it, so I'll be in touch later on Facebook. We'll put we gotta. I guess we'll have to put together some kind of manifesto or something. But we'll have to get creative with it because since we're doing we're bringing drums into it, that we will have to get a little creative. But that's okay. It's, like I said, it's much easier than just one person trying to start a cult. If two people start a cult, so all right, Joseph. We will talk to you later, and everybody, we will see you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.